cite the very paragraph you iterated from Henry Lefebvre on Nietzsche. Yeah, the joy more profound than the pain is a strong word, more strong than the demonstrations of philosopher. This is an act, not a concept. This act contributes to the correction of the world, of life. I think this is a nice sentence to bridge here. Your talk and the politics of fun. The first section, you in several ways, you cited several philosophers and to demonstrate what philosophizing or philosophy should be like. But it comes to me if our audience is not that real trained or that the philosophy, Western philosophy, becomes their habitus or become habits. Like here in your talk is heavily philosophical, in habits. But I think half of our audience are from the seminar, and probably these backgrounds are not very familiar to them. But nevertheless, the first section, the way you describe of philosophizing or doing philosophy, actually is a quite familiar one. For example, like say, to go deep in ordinary life in order to act on it, and the double movement from the denial of the common sense to its restitution, creative response, or capable of transforming a fact into a question, or this very nicely illustrate or capture many of our readings in the seminar, Publics of Fun. For example, we read Mikhail Bakhtin. Mm-hmm. So his illustration of Robert A. and his world, the carnivalesque, the grotesque, and all those, you can see applied here. And also we read Baudelaire's analysis and comments on comic laughter and caricature, which is so nicely, gives this kind of sense. So it's not really far away, and also Henri Bergson. We haven't read it, but then remind me. We should include Bergson's essay on comedy, comedy and the comic laughter. Mm-hmm. And all this actually the expression of how we should do in philosophy apply to this. And then Nietzsche says its idea of philosopher.
Sodic method.
Yeah, philosopher don't need a method. What he needs is an exodus or a sohom or a journey traveling, including all the risk and danger for it. Yeah. And then, of course, then there's Nietzsche's aphorism. So all these, I think, sometimes these what you describe of doing philosophy, correspond nicely with what we taught in the seminar. There are some few discussions here. For example, like then I find some specific links in the philosophers you cited. For example, there's a sentence you say that is this gesture a kind of surge of energy stemming from the emotionality of thinking, its primary kinetic dimension, its incline, right? Here, reminds me, the Clino. The Clino. Yeah, Clino. The Clino by Lucretius, and then rediscovered by Henri Bergson, and then all the people you cited here, Deleuze, Derrida, Artaud, are all good students of the Klineman, the idea of Klineman. So it really gives our sense of how the philosophize should not be something, any kind of mechanical application or dogmatic, but there are also always chance from unexpected angle or something like that, and then moving us through certain questions or directions into it. Yeah, and then here, the role of habit. I think I have some few words on this. You cited Masumi's comment, Brian Masumi's comment, and
Masumi's comments of Artaud.
Of here saying that Artaud, right, saying that this is because he approves of thinking of oneself as a being, as an innate being, who is then able to reproduce oneself. This type of innateness is synonymous with complacency and habit. I think that the last sentence.
And we have habit.
Yes, I think this last sentence characterizes the negative.
Of course.
Disapproval of this, but I think here Masumi's negatively positioned habit, I think, is premature. I think his later work, I forgot. I probably don't remember the exact name. What can we learn from animals or turkeys or something like that, in which he operates nicely on the idea of instinct. And because we always presume instinct belong to those lower creatures, including insects or animals, not high form of animals. And then we reserve certain things for our human, logic, language, or something like that. But he is saying that that instinct can never be what we presume as a mechanical response to the environment. Any creature, if its instinct is like that, it cannot survive. It will go extinct. No. So the instinct for Masumi at that point already contained. It's already a creative response in certain situations by any creature. So it's never as we assume as a mechanical response or something like that. So if instinct can be restored like this, then how about habit? Habits. If, for example, like in Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, habit or hexis that constituted the character still plays a very important role, in which we find ourselves in a situation, and then we understand ourselves, and we understand the situation, and then we try to deliberate and make choice and give a good action, good practice. So this habit, as everywhere here, including your paper, including our including our reading of poetry. I think our habits that program somehow through our birth and social origin or the beauty, education or still play a very important role than these negative things. And then one thing. Our subject is philosophy and education. And the education, the pedagogy, didactic, cannot do without, or is itself already built in the relationship of a major language.
Of course.
Yeah, right. Our curriculum, syllabus, and then required readings, and then exercise, and all these, and the student and professors are so. It's the major language is already built in. Okay. Then related questions from that quote from Emily Dickinson. Very nice quote, and I'm very interested in that. If I read a book and it makes my whole body so cold, no fire can warm me, I know that it's poetry. If I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off, I know that is poetry. Okay, so this kind of feeling, the poetry that make me my body cold, or that I feel I lost my head or something like that, it's kind of feeling. Something like the problem that so nicely analyzed by Jean-François Lyotard on counts as one, or grotesque or something. You cannot say that your imagination, your understanding work, and then find out certain kind of meaning or something form for them. But you feel, you got feeling, right? You're very fine. Okay. There's that thought. This is subjective reflexive, but this reflexive I will not translate it into Chinese as 反思, because 思 means thinking. Probably it's not there yet. I would translate it as a subjective reflexive as 感觉. You definitely got feeling. 你已经有那个感觉. Okay. Then the problem is that. How do you as a professor or teacher, how do you communicate that kind of feeling to others, to students or others? Of course, you can come up with language, but you, in that kind of representation, in that kind of language communication, that you make, being that can be understood is language. Okay, you communicate what you understood to others. But that feeling, that pre-linguistic or original feeling, are not necessary.
Reflexive.
Are not necessary. Transmitted or communicable, right? So these kind of pre-linguistic, I don't know whether this expression.
Or meta-linguistic.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Then pose a question that just come to my mind. Ekphrasis. Ekphrasis.
Greek. Ekphrasis.
I don't know. Probably it's originally phrase. Greek.
It's Greek.
Okay.
And you write it like this in ancient Greek.
Right. Yes. It must be from Greek, because originally it is a discussion of a shell,
Yes.
of a shell in which a story, a narrative of a war was sculpted on the shell. Okay, that's where that problem comes from. Now, if you check on Chinese translation, it's quite limited. 他们讲说是文字化或者是 something 文字化或者是什么东西。It means that you use word to characterize painting or something like that. But there is very limited translation, because this, I should say that this is the problematics that anytime you try to express or represent some form in other medias with another form. Like here, in your few footage here shows, if 我们讲的说诗中有画，画中有诗 there's a poetry in the painting, or there's a painting in the poetry, but you cannot properly transmit or express the poetry through the painting, vice versa. So here now you have a dance, a theatrical performance, right? And then let's say that you try to come up with some philosophical exploration or analysis, right? So we can take this as a kind of inferences. So it's very difficult, and how this can be done without the risk of that's why many critics are hated by the artist or performance critic. Always try to yeah. So this is things very interesting questions for your project. And here also come to my mind is that what Georgia Agamben called infancy. Something, as you said, of course there's feeling, there's experience, but this experience are something meta-linguistic or pre-linguistic. So similarly, maybe these theatrical, dance or theatrical, have that kind of experience. But anytime when you reduce it to certain kind of a representation or something like that, you left out a lot or something cannot grasp it properly. So that's what I find interesting difficulties for your project. Okay, I give these comments.
I want to say this. I think I am irrespectful. It's my feeling. Being irrespectful, visiting you, and speaking about Western philosophy. I had two options. One, to assume my irrespectfulness and rely on your you are expect me to do so. So I used this expectation. And the other option should be to work on your philosophy and then make the things. It was impossible, and the second, it should be impossible for me for this time being, and second, respectfulness, to try to do so in such a short period of time. Of course, I have read many things of, without being an expert, of Chinese philosophy also, and yeah, between among my readings, and perhaps I am how to say, influenced by many of these things, but without being in a state to write about them, because I am not expert of your philosophy. So perhaps I don't understand quite well, and of course I cannot speak Chinese, so the translation perhaps is not good. It's a nightmare. And so I said to myself, it's better to speak to them for something you know better than to speak to them for something they know better from you, and say things that are not related. I want to make this explanation in front of you because I think it's not the good thing to do. The good thing to do is to try to, when you are in another culture, not in another European culture, in another Western culture, in another culture, to bridge things. But it's not easy. There are experts for this, and always this expert, if they don't speak Chinese, they are not experts. I see you translating, and I said to myself, oh my God, how difficult it is to translate in Chinese, not a word, but a concept, which is not, it's not a Chinese concept, or it's a concept of Aristotle. And when I had my support of my thesis in France, and I was based on Aeschylus, which is tragic poet, not philosopher. And so I had many things from ancient Greek, and I was terrified because it was an exam. And in a certain point, instant of the examination, the French philosopher said, "Listen, Mrs. Theodoropoulou, I will ask you something very difficult, philosophically. Which is the scent of hamartia?" And I said to him, "Professor, it's the easiest thing because I'm Greek, and hamartia is related to the Greek language and to the Greek philosophy. It's difficult perhaps for you, but not for me." And it's the same with some concepts of you, because now it's the trend in Western culture to take things from Japan, from Taiwan, and speak about this and that, and it's tragic. It's tragic, and I don't want to fall to this culpa. That's why I'm respectfully ask for your clemency for not have references to your philosophy. It's for the sake for your philosophy. But that's why I say to be to the Biennale, because you can bring us a richness which is for us precious about the gesture, philosophical gesture.
Well, I think, yeah, okay. I think, it gave me more thought, because I'm thinking of, in Chinese philosophy, probably we can find many similar teaching from Zen Buddhism or something like that, yeah, but probably the description may be very different. But Chinese philosophy are still, fortunately, just like Western philosophy, has a huge body of text, right? But this first, because last year I spent 6 months, half years in Africa, and then we talk with people who are doing African philosophy, and then we know some particular problems that I never thought of before. For example, like they don't, if there is no such kind of extensive text, then can you say that African don't have a philosophy, or if they have, of course, African, many of them in 20th century, they have been trained in France or in UK or something like that. They can quite capable of doing philosophy in Western philosophy. But then, if you talk about African philosophy, then probably like ethnography or the collection of maybe not texts but from oral. I don't know because that's very difficult to imagine from oral materials, and some of them it's not like here when you say that there you have one or two paragraph have a negative attitude toward representation and repeated something. But I would say that the repetition, of course, Deleuze has a book on that. The repetition should not be something that we can take light of. Before there's text, these these tribes have thousands of years, and then transmitted through the folk song or folk dance or something like that, because of they repeat it.
Of course.
Yeah, right. But the repeated is never mechanically produced.
Of course.
Yeah. So that's so these kind of things, always make me think of how about African philosophy? Do they think or have a philosophical questioning or problematizing or something like that? Then I come up with Wittgenstein's sentence that if lion can speak, we could not understand him. Then could we change that word so maybe when lion philosophize, we cannot understand him. Yeah, yes, something yes. So that interesting question, because
yes, it's very interesting. It is that the questions of intercultural philosophy is just a reminder that there are no major philosophy. Western philosophy is not a major philosophy. We don't read Chinese philosophy or Indian philosophy in order to find the way to impose Western philosophy. We read the Chinese philosophy in order, as philosophers of course, to see if there are connections and understand more profoundly the way of thinking of two different people. So it's not like in the 19th century where the philosophers of Europe discovered that the Chinese also have philosophy or the African. No, it's not like this. It's like comparing two ways of thinking about something. This is amazing. This is amazing. But you must, to do so, you must also, how to say, recognize the other through his language, his culture, his experience. This is very, very difficult. And that's why I think it's the future of philosophy also. The practical philosophy on the one hand, in my opinion, is the future of philosophy, and the second hand is the intercultural philosophy. Not with major philosophies and minor philosophies, in politically speaking, but the only way to survive in the world, not in Europe, in the world. We'll be dead. Then we'll be astral, sconi, sable.
Sun.
Huh?
Sun.
Astral sand.
I found the films great, fantastic, very good films. And the previous part, all this passages from different philosophers are also very good. But I found it the philosophy, particle philosophies from different philosophers.
And the practical,
And, yeah, right.
yes.
Let me explain. In the films, I think those are good films, but you also take it as a laboratory. In the beginning, you said that we need to move the laboratories